Hey, hoes, and welcome back to another episode of the Toby Talk. So, if you're new to this series, the Toby Talk is basically a web series where I discuss certain things, different concepts, topics, and I explain them, and then, I just talk about them, all right? And I give you guys my interpretation. So, what I digested, spat out for y'all to eat, whether you receive it or not is up to you, but that's basically what the Toby Talk is all about, period. And for this episode of the Toby Talk, we are going to dive deeper into the concept of spirituality, something we talked about in a previous episode. So if you're interested in watching videos like this, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that post bell notifications down below, and let's go. In a previous video, we talked about what is spirituality. And in that video, I gave what I believe spirituality is, gave a little breakdown to what spirituality is, the concept, because I feel a lot of people are opening up to spirituality in this new age of Aquarius. So I just wanted to break it down. So if you haven't seen that video, or if you just want a refresher, I have linked it below. So make sure you click that link and, head to that video and watch it. It'll kind of give you a better overview for this video, but you don't have to, it's all up to you. But for this video, what I wanted to talk about is something that was mentioned in the other video, and that is the debate on spirituality versus religion. Yes, we are going to get into some tea here, okay? I had to sip my water because it's some tea. Hold on, another sip. Okay, so in order to basically gain a better understanding of the debate between spirituality and religion, you kind of need to know what spirituality is. Like I said, I made another video about it, so you can click that in the description below. But TLDR, basically spirituality, in my definition, is the practice and lifestyle of connecting deeper with one's soul to, actualize and unlock the divinity within, right? So your own soul. And through spirituality, or acts of spirituality, the purpose is to learn more about yourself, the earth, God and the universe, and the divine plan, right? Just a little my brief definition of what spirituality is, okay? Now that we know what spirituality is, let's dig into what is religion. How do we define religion? When we talk about religion, we kind of know, I guess, what we're talking about. Like, things come to our head, right? When we talk about religion, whether that's an Abrahamic faith or non-Abrahamic faith, whether it's monotheistic, etc., ancient religion, modern religion, those, good connotation, bad connotation. When we think of religion, all these things come into our head, but what actually is religion? Like, what the hell is religion? Another thing to understand about religion is that there's so many different definitions. Well, let me not say so many different definitions, but the definitions vary, okay? Kind of like with spirituality, or how we talked about in the previous video, how the definition varies. With religion, it's the same thing. There's different definitions for religion, right? But the definition I'm going to give is just one definition that I think pretty much sums up what the majority overall religion is, right? So religion is defined as a particular institution or system of faith and worship, right? That involves the belief and worship of a supernatural controlling power. And this supernatural controlling power could be a personal God, right? Think of God, the Holy Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, or Allah, Yahweh. Or it could be a pantheon of gods, right? So think of Zeus, Aphrodite, Hecate, Hera, Poseidon, etc. Now that we know what religion is and what spirituality is, right? Why is there a debate? Why is it that it seems like religious communities and spiritual communities, they be going at it? Not all, but it seems like there's a debate. It's like, oh, you're either religious or you're spiritual. It's like, oh, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. You ever heard people that say that? Or they're like, I'm just a very spiritual person, I don't belong to any religion. Or they'll be like, oh no, I don't do none of that spiritual shit, I'm religious, I'm faithful. You hear, if you're like me, you've probably heard it before. And I think it's a interesting debate. And it's one that I really wanted to cover because, like I said, a lot of people are starting to learn more about spirituality and open up. And most of these people either come from or came from, a religious standing, a religious background. So it can be kind of polarizing for them and almost like an identity crisis. That's just what I've seen personally, what I've seen socially in groups. So I kind of wanted to talk about it to create a safe space here, but also just to explain why is there a debate, and are religion and spirituality that much different than we perceive them to be? All right, so with the differences, there's obviously some differences between what we consider religion and what we consider spirituality, at least in the modern sense, right? Which have contributed to the debate of it's either versus, it's either versus or. So let's understand what those differences are and kind of talk about them. So one difference is that you don't need a religion to be spiritual. So what I mean by that is spirituality is a very individual experience. So you don't necessarily have to belong to a certain religion in order to be a spiritual person, because spirituality is all about your connection with your soul, your connection with God and the universe and the divine, seeing the world and basically ascending into your purpose. And you can honestly, for many people, they do it without a religion. You can kind of do it without belonging to any core set of religion. Because with the religion, basically there's a set of rules, and it's like, in order to achieve this end goal, you have to go about it this way. You have to believe this thing, you have to do that. But for spiritual people, it's like, no, I don't have to find it that way if that way doesn't work for me, basically. Because spirituality is a very individual thing, so you don't really need to belong to a certain religion, a specific religion, any one religion, right, to be a spiritual person, which is why you hear people who are spiritual talk about, oh, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. And basically what they're saying with that is that they don't really belong to a certain religion, but they engage in spiritual practices. I know it may seem weird, contradictory to some people, but bear with me, we're gonna keep going and we're gonna dig deeper. And building off that, like I said, spirituality is very individual, it's more individual. It is about searching for the truth, your truth, right? And validation within yourself. Versus in a religion, you're searching in the truth and validation based off of whatever God is worshipped, or through the teachings of a prophet, etc. And you find truth in those words. You have holy texts, looking at Bible, Torah, Quran. You have holy texts that you read, that you study, and those contain the truth on how you should validate yourself, how you should find salvation, how you should find enlightenment, right? But with spirituality, it's like, no, you don't need to go outside of yourself to find these things, because you have all the answers, right? Because in spirituality, they see the soul as an infinite, ever-expansive being. So it's like, if your soul is infinite, if your soul is ever-expansive, what works for you, your own truth, what validates you, is going to be found within you. Spirituality calls for you to break free of conformity. So it calls you to find your own truth. And like we said, you have to find that truth and validation within yourself. And when they say breaking from conformity, it's do not believe things just because people told you. Do not believe something just because everyone else believes it. Break away from groupthink. Find your own thought process. Find your own truth. Find your own journey. Right? That is something that spirituality really stresses. And granted, there's so many different spiritual traditions and stuff. We're just talking about spirituality in general, common themes across, right? These definitions, these differences will vary depending on the tradition, but we're just talking about in general, right? So it does call for you to break free from conformity and, find your own truth, and to speak that own truth, to tell your truth, because your truth is valid and it deserves to be spoken, right? Because you're finding your own truth, your spiritual beliefs will be unique to you a lot of times. Depending on the tradition, they'll probably fall within that cultural tradition, but they can also be unique to you. And as you grow, your spirituality grows. So with religion, everybody has to believe the same thing, right? To be a part of, and it kind of works like that. It has to work like that. You have to believe the same thing for them to be on the same page. The priest preaches this, the priestess preaches, etc. Like, you have to all believe, kind of conform to the same thing and have the same beliefs to be part of that shared community, because it's built on rules and tradition and beliefs and worship systems, right? That's what a religion is. So with spirituality, it's not like that. Your beliefs are your own beliefs, and you probably you could belong to a tradition and you believe generally the same things, but the way you interpret it within the parameters of that tradition is still going to be personal and unique to you, right? And then another thing that's a difference between spirituality and religion is that spirituality really emphasizes energy. So what is energy, right? Everybody knows what energy is pretty much on a physical standpoint. Physics, energy cannot matter, it cannot be created nor destroyed. Electricity is an energy, heat's an energy, etc., right? But when we're talking about spirituality, energy, we're talking about, yes, those energies, but spirit, like the soul. The soul is an energy, right? God, in spiritual context, is the energy that can create and can destroy other energies, because God transcends that, right? So in spirituality, you believe that everything is energy. Like, I am energy, you are energy. Even the animals, your dog, Fido, right? Blue's Clues, Clifford, the big ol' red bitch, right? Is energy. Everything, even the chair, energy, and if you study auras or stuff like that, then you'll know more about that. If you don't know what auras are, it's okay, just Google it. We're not gonna really mention it again, maybe another video. But anyways, seeing that everything is energy and everything has energy. So everything flows, energy can become good, energy can become bad. It just, can be creative or destructive. That's just what it is. And knowing that everything has energy, you have to honor it, because if anything has energy, everything on some level is similar, because we all stem from the same energy of God, right? The creator. And yeah, knowing that water has energy, fire has energy, earth has energy, air has energy, everything, and honoring those energies, respecting it. So if you emphasize energy, then maybe you wouldn't pollute the waters as much, because you're like, oh, that's an energy. That's a life source for myself and other creatures that are also energies that all work in this system, right? Circle of life. So maybe you wouldn't pollute the water. Maybe you wouldn't blow so much gas in the air, because air has an energy. So just understanding that everything is energy, and that has meaning. That has consequences, that has respect, right? Spirituality, moving on, is also very fluid. It's less dogmatic and it's more flexible. And when we mean by dogmatic, it's kind of like rigid, so sometimes with religions, they can get very dogmatic. Think of like dogma as like a strict rule, like, oh, you cannot do this or else you're gonna go to hell, or you cannot do this or else you're gonna not be saved, right? Those are, and somebody that's like, yes, you cannot do that, etc., etc., etc. That would be like examples of dogma. Think of like a fundamentalist, kind of, right? Because dogma is like taking it real far. So like a fundamentalist. With spirituality, it's not like that. Will you find some dogmatic spiritual people and fundamentalist spiritual people? Yes, you will. But within spirituality, you're not really supposed to be dogmatic or fundamentalist like that. Even within the traditions, they're more fluid and they're more flexible. With spirituality, because it's flexible, people tend to combine different things. Especially a lot of New Age people, they'll like combine things from Hinduism, Christianity, Buddhism, Taoism, and mix it up into their own form of spirituality. And, I guess that's them, I'm not going to say I can't say that I condone it, because with certain traditions, you should not be appropriating and just picking and choosing. But with spirituality, it is flexible and it is fluid, and you do what serves you, you do what, what works for you. So you're able to pull truths from different areas and learn lessons from different areas, be they religious or non-religious. You can pull them in, and it is fluid. And with spirituality, you can combine. Some people practice two different spiritual traditions at the same time. They practice actual traditions, but they could practice 2 or 3, etc., depending on their heritage, their ancestry, their beliefs. So it is more fluid, unlike religion, where it's like, if you're a Muslim, you cannot be Hindu. If you are Jewish, and we're talking about faith, we're not talking about like ethnic. If you are a Jew, you cannot be a Christian. You know, it's kind of like, you know, it doesn't, yeah. But with spirituality, it's like, yeah, you know, it's fluid, it's expansive, combine, right? And that, granted, that can become problematic, but we're just stating the fact. Spirituality, your spiritual beliefs are unique to you. They evolve as you evolve. So as you have spiritual growth, your spirituality grows. So maybe when you were like 12, you believed one thing and you thought that was to be valid and truth, but when you became 30, you're like, that's not true. So your spirituality evolves in that way. As you learn new opinions, as you learn different truths from different sources, you can adapt. Something that worked for you before but doesn't work now, you can delete it. Or something that didn't work before and it works now, you've awakened and you've understood, and now you can add it in. So it evolves. Unlike with a religion where those holy texts are those holy texts, there's no evolving it. You know, a lot of times people call for religions to update themselves, right? But that kind of goes against what the religion is, because it's like, hey, this is what we've believed for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. There's not really evolution. Now, granted, sometimes there is, you know, depending on the religious tradition, but it doesn't really evolve. Like the goal is for that you evolve to it, not that it evolves to you, if that makes sense. Like, you evolve in your understanding of it, not that it is evolving with your understanding. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, I'm so sorry. Lastly, one of the differences is that spirituality is just more focused on enlightenment and, you know, the expansiveness of your soul. With spirituality, you see the soul as an infinite being. Because it came from an infinite being, it is infinite itself. The soul does not die. The body dies, but the soul doesn't, which is a similarity seen in religions, but in spirituality, it's really emphasized you getting to know your soul, you getting to become one with your soul, with your higher self, and just understanding that you are powerful. You are a very powerful being because your soul is infinite. And it is expansive, ever expansive, and through it you can do all things, right? Versus with religion, some of those aspects may be, you know, seen in certain religions, but it's more so on moral salvation. It's more so on how do I live my best in this life so that I can reap the rewards in the next life, or how do I live as this prophet, as this teacher taught me, to have the best life possible, right? And how, you know, how do I be morally saved, basically. Spirituality, and there can be, and sometimes there is a moral salvation, like there is being a good person, right? But it's really about enlightenment and getting to know your soul and being one with it, versus doing what you need to do so that you can get to the holy place afterwards. Okay, now we're getting into the similarities. So I know we spent quite a bit of time talking about the differences, but now we're going to talk about the similarities. And I think some of y'all will see is that when it comes down to it, spiritualities and religions are a lot more alike than you would have thought. One thing is that it's often said, and I believe can be argued, that spirituality is just an umbrella term under which religion is under. And if you've watched the other video on spirituality, I think you'd have a greater sense of why it can be argued that religions fall under spirituality, and how spirituality is just the umbrella term, that all religions are parts of spirituality. Not necessarily are spirituality, but they are aspects of spirituality, or ways through which spirituality is practiced. And even if you look at definitions of spirituality, depending on what they say, sometimes they'll talk in religious means. You know, they'll talk about religions and being very pious, being very faithful, etc. And that's because the truth is that all religions emphasize certain aspects of spirituality, whether that is being more in tune with your life's purpose, understanding God at the highest level, knowing that we all come from one being, or being very prayerful, being very, mystic, in the sense that you surrender to the higher power and you ascend to become one with the higher power, right? Or just, just being very in tune with nature and stuff like that, etc. These things can be they're found in different religions. So that's one big similarity. All religions do emphasize certain aspects of spirituality. And sometimes when you even hear people say that they're very spiritual, depending on what faith you are, maybe the connotation that you'll see is a prophet, right? Or you'll see, oh, this is a holy person. And that's because religion and spirituality are very similar. Like, religion is spirituality, like, it falls under spirituality, like, if we're being honest, right? And another example of how they're similar is that there's that belief in a power greater than yourself, right? So understanding that you are a powerful being, like in spirituality, but understand that there is a power beyond you, right? And in religion, this would be God, whatever they label God as, him slash her as, or there would be the gods, whatever pantheon, or, depending on where, if the religion is monotheistic or polytheistic, etc. So there's that same belief that there's something out there greater than me. Like, you are part of something way bigger. We're gonna cue Beyonce's again. You're part of something way bigger. You're part of something way bigger. And there's also the emphasis in both spirituality and religion to, find your purpose in life, whether that purpose was given by your higher self or that purpose was given to you by God, etc. Finding out why you're here, what are you meant to do, and living out that purpose defined by your spiritual practices. So if you're Muslim, following the different traditions, I guess the hadiths, hope I got that reference right, and doing your prayers 5 times a day. If you're a Christian, depending on what sect you're doing, could be different things. Like if you're a Catholic, right? Going to confession, praying your rosaries, maybe praying the novenas, observing Lent, But if you're a spiritual person, maybe you have certain rituals that you do, a meditation daily, or if you belong to a spiritual tradition, maybe you have to create an altar and consult God at your altar, seek different divination tools for your spiritual well-being, health, etc. Whatever it is, right? Both emphasize, finding your purpose, understanding what you're here to do, because we're all here for a reason, right? And then living that purpose out through your spiritual being. So being a good person according to your spiritual practices. The emphasis on the golden rule of like, do unto others as you would to yourself. Love others. Love yourself unconditionally and love others unconditionally. That is something that you see across religions and you see across spirituality traditions. That same golden rule. Like when you really go back to the core aspects of it, we believe in the same things. Even when you study religions, if you really study religions objectively and dig deeper into the core aspects of the majority of these world religions, they believe the same things. Same sauce, just some different ingredients. Same with spirituality. That whole golden rule, be good to others, love others, love yourself unconditionally. Same thing, the power of love, that love is the only thing that's real. You see that across spirituality, you see that across religions as well. So these core similarities, right? These very core similarities. Another thing that is within both spirituality and religion is the belief in, world or worlds that exist beyond the physical and life after death. So whether you believe in reincarnation, right? Which would be a form of life after death, or you believe that the soul lives on, or you believe in the celestial realm, the astral plane, heaven, hell, nirvana, etc. There is that belief within spiritualities and in religions that there is a world that exists outside of Earth. There's a different dimension, a different plane of existence, right? Where God resides, right? That exists beyond Earth. And in spirituality, you believe that the soul is immortal, so it lives on. And in these religions, you believe the same things, whether you believe that soul lives on and incarnates in another life, or it goes on to heaven, or purgatory, or etc. There's that belief that the physical is not permanent. There is a supernatural, there is a spiritual that exists, and death is not the end. And most times it is the beginning, and there's other worlds out there. How you define them depends on the tradition, depends on you. But there's other worlds. That is another shared similarity, right? And then lastly, there's even more. But lastly, what we're going to talk about is like how certain aspects and beliefs in supernatural beings such as spirits, exist within what I was about to say supernatural, exist within spirituality and religion. So, you know, in certain religions, they believe in certain spirits that exist. Take Islam, for example, and jinn. You know, jinn is like a different race of being, kind of like spiritual beings that aren't angels, but they're not humans. They're kind of like an intermediary that exists, right? In spirituality, everything is energy. So you believe that spirits of the water exist, spirits of the earth, you know, spirits of the wind, human spirits, depending on what tradition you believe in, you know, it varies, but belief in spirit, supernatural beings is a thing, as well as angels. In spirituality, in different spirituality traditions, you see the presence of angels. Angels are something that I feel like is probably almost like universal, because you see it in almost like every religion, as well as probably every spiritual tradition as well. So belief in supernatural beings such as that, and of course, the higher power, God, Yahweh, Allah, insert any other traditional view, Chineke, etc. You know, belief in the higher power. So those are some similarities, you know, between spirituality and religion. And I hope with seeing those similarities and those differences, you tend to see that how they're more alike than you think. Like I said, same shit, different context, same sauce, but with some different ingredients, but it's still the same sauce. Now that I've told you the similarities and the differences, we're gonna get into my interpretation, because like we said at the Toby Talk, it's all about how I've digested it and how I'm spitting it out back to y'all. So my interpretation is that honestly, spirituality and religion are way more similar than different. That's just what I believe. Even when looking at religions, different religions, I believe they're more similar than different. Obviously, are there core differences? Yes, and the core differences shouldn't be, I guess, downplayed, because that's what makes one tradition that tradition unique, and the other tradition that tradition unique. But I think when you really look at the fundamental principles, they're the same, right? And that same thing goes for spirituality and religion. Way more similar than different when you look at the fundamentals. And I also do believe that spirituality encompasses religion. I believe that all religions fall under spirituality. Those are just certain traditions, faiths, right, that are used for people to achieve spiritual means. You know, some, maybe within some, they're more limited in achieving those things, others they're more free, but it really depends on how the person uses it. But I do believe spirituality encompasses religion. That's just my belief. If you don't believe that, that's cool, but I do believe they are one and the same, yet not one and the same at the same time. You know, spirituality is not religion, but religion is spirituality. Yes. When you look at it, many belief systems that we would consider religions blur the lines between spirituality and religion, right? So take, for example, Hinduism. Some people argue that Hinduism is a spirituality, others and a lifestyle, others argue it's a religion. Well, in the Western context, they've labeled it a religion, but for those who actually practice it, it goes beyond that. And spirituality goes beyond, you know, because it's the umbrella term. Another example is Buddhism. If you study Buddhism, some people will be like, oh, Buddhism's not a religion, or they'll be like, oh, Buddhism's a way of life, or you'll see people that combine Buddhism with like Christianity or something like that. Well, because those are traditions that kind of blur the line between religion and spirituality. You know, another thing is ATRs, African Traditional Religions, right? So these are African traditions that when you look at them, it's like, well, this kind of blurs the line. Like the Western world has called it religions, but is it really religion or is it a spirituality? So that kind of really shows how spirituality encompasses religion, and they're way more similar than different, because you have so many traditions that really blur the lines. And it really goes depending on who you're talking to. Are you talking to a native practitioner, or are you talking to a foreign theologian, right? Or academic that studied it? It really blurs the line, and I really think that calls us to really expand how we look and view religion, our own and others, and how we look and view spirituality, right? And it shouldn't be a binary black versus white, one versus the other, when really they're all part of the same thing. And those traditions that blur the lines, I think just further show it, you know? And just my personal opinion on this whole debate on spirituality versus religion, like, I get it, it's valid, and I think the conversation needs to be had so that people can understand. But at the same time, arguing over it, I feel like it's pointless because spirituality does encompass religion, in my opinion. And I think it's possible for someone to be spiritual and follow specific religion. So I do think it's possible for you to be a spiritual person, have spiritual practices, and be Jewish or, you know, Christian or Muslim, just using the Abrahamic faiths as a, example. Because I think when we talk about religion, for a lot of people, those are the ones that come up, especially in the Western world, right? Spirituality is fluid, so because it's fluid, you can belong to a certain spiritual tradition and practice a religion. Like, I do even think that you can belong to a spiritual tradition that is not of that religion and still practice that religion. I do think so. Like, I completely believe it. And especially when you look at African traditions and spiritualities, a lot of times they allow for that. Like the way they're set up would allow for that. And when you just look at colonialization of like Latin America, the Americas and Africa and stuff, you see that there's so many religions that are syncretized. Yes, the religion may be Catholic, but so many of the aspects come from that indigenous spirituality. That whether that indigenous spirituality was, indigenous American or African, etc. You see so many of these traditions. For example, Dia de los Muertos, which had its origins in, traditional Mesoamerican faiths and traditions. Or you look at Halloween, which was created by the Catholic Church, but it had its traditions in pagan European traditions. And that's Halloween, that's Christmas, that's Easter, that's so much of Christianity, honestly. So I do think it's possible for you to belong to a spiritual tradition that is not of a particular religion and still be allowed for it. Whether that religion says so or not, or the people in that religion say so or not, is not what I'm saying. I don't really care for that. I just believe that it is possible for you to do that if you so choose, because spirituality is fluid. And we see how intertwined spirituality and religion are when we even look at these religions, taking Abrahamic religions, for example, when we look at the Sufism in Islam, or we look at the mystic saints in Christianity that surrendered their whole life to God and they had visions like Joan of Arc, visions, and could tell the future and spoke with spirits, which nowadays people would be like, what? Yeah, we had Joan of Arc and we had other saints who were levitating and stuff, doing those things, yet they were considered holy people. And that's because spirituality and religion so intertwined, so intermixed. There really shouldn't be an argument. There really shouldn't be a division. And yeah, people have been combining spiritual traditions with their certain religion for centuries. So I don't see why it would stop now. And in conclusion, basically, we're all searching for deeper connection with ourselves, deeper connection with God and the universe, deeper connection with others, So how we find that connection is going to be different. I'm not you, you're not me. My journey is different than yours. Your journey is different than his and hers and theirs, And it's like that relationship that you have with yourself, that relationship that you have with God, however you define God, right? The universe, etc., is personal. It's going to be different because you are your own being. And even though we may share some of the same beliefs, even if we shared all the same beliefs, the way that we process it, view it, intellectualize it is going to be different because we're not the same person, right? So honestly, when it comes to the spirituality versus religion debate, find your truth and go with it. If you just want to be a religious person and you don't want anything to do with spirituality, that's cool. But don't demonize people who choose otherwise, right? Because isn't that against the golden rule? And if you are somebody who's spiritual and you want nothing to do with religion, that's cool. But don't demonize and shit on people who are religious, So long as y'all are not hurting each other. You get what I'm saying? Like, love and light. Isn't that going against love and light? And if you are, a fabulous unicorn and you want to combine your religion with spirituality and you prefer to do both, that is so cool. Do it. Like, I encourage you to do it. Don't feel jaded or twisted because the religious community is telling you this and the spirituality community is telling you that. Fuck them. Fuck that shit. It's your journey. You do what you want. And like I said, fundamentally, we all believe the same thing. So why not ethically pull information from different sources? Ethically, we're not doing appropriation. But you get what I'm saying? So do you. Do your mixture, however you feel it. Just don't shit on another person because they don't do it the way you are. Don't demonize them, say that they're low vibrational or going to hell or blah, 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 because they don't see this, despite what your tradition believes, despite what you believe. That's not your jurisdiction. You are not the higher power. You are not God. So don't do that shit. Shut the fuck up and move on, right? But like I said, do what resonates with you and leave the rest. You know, you do you, boo, and period. That's basically my conclusion on this whole spirituality versus religion debate. I hope you guys liked this episode. Like I said, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that post bell notifications down below so you can get future videos like this one. And, you know, share your comments, share your thoughts. You know, be nice in the comments. Be nice, y'all, because we're not all going to agree, but let's have a dialogue. That's why we're having this conversation. And let me know your thoughts. And, you know, follow me on my socials. They're posted in the description box below. And let's keep the conversation going. Also, let me know what other videos you want to see on the Toby Talk. If you want to see more videos on spirituality, other concepts, topics, let me know. Because I can talk all day, as y'all can see from the timestamps. So, yeah, just let me know. And, you know, go in the grace of love, light, peace, and joy, and God. Amen. Peace.